Thank you. Noscite ipsum, Latin for know thyself. Isn't that what it's all about? Knowing thyself? To be resolute in action, to find resolution to both internal and external conflicts, to resolve questions, both asked and unasked. Isn't that what it's all about? To know thyself. Socrates is credited with that simple phrase. He was well before his time, 470 BC, and his teachings are still impacting what's happening all over the world, in and out of schools. Perhaps it was around, I'm going to take a few liberties, but perhaps it was around 430 BC-ish when he asked himself a question that he had to resolve. Was he happy being a mason? Well, history would show that answer was no. He became an educator and a philosopher by simply asking a question and not being afraid to answer that. See, it is all about our comfort level with asking and answering questions. Perhaps you were at a meeting like me not too long ago, and somebody asked a question, and you were like, man, I was just going to ask that question. Or perhaps somebody asked a question, and you were like, man, that was a really good question. And it provided clarity to which you did not have before. It's the questions that lead us to discovery. And are we doing that enough? So Socrates confronted himself, so I thought I should confront myself. Henry David Thoreau said, it's not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is, what are you busy about? So it wasn't too long ago when I asked that question. What am I busy about? 29 years in education? Am I doing enough? Am I the professional I want to be? Am I making the impact that I want to make? And quite frankly, as a father, am I the father that I want to be? Am I providing opportunities for my children? Enriching experiences? Tough question. That answer was no. So after 29 years, by and large in one place, moved the family with the support of my lovely wife and moved 4 hours away. Major move. I have to tell you, everybody wasn't necessarily happy. But ultimately, it was the asking and the answering of questions. So we're in this wonderfully diverse area, giving my children experiences they never would have had, and quite frankly, experiences I never would have had, by confronting brutal facts of the current situation, as Jim Collins says in his book, Good to Great. That's what we need to do. We ought not be afraid to confront ourselves, and quite frankly, confront our business colleagues, students, our teaching colleagues, administrative colleagues. We can't be afraid of the brutal facts of the current situation. That's what questioning will do. It will allow us, I believe, freedom down the line. Here's what I would say to any student. It's a wonderful quote by Berger. Knowing the answers will help you in school, but knowing how to question will help you in life. Not too long ago, there was a study in England. 1,000 parents, 1,000 4-year-olds. Here's what that study showed. 4-year-olds, they ask lots of questions. Certainly not revolutionary, right? 344 to 388 questions they ask a day. Yeah. So let's just simplify it. Say they're awake 12 hours a day. They ask 360 questions. That's a question every other minute throughout the course of a day. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that we do that to ourselves. We want to get anything done. Or certainly have our business colleagues ask all the questions, or our students in our classrooms. But we need to do a better job. I mean, something happens, right? 4-year-olds asking all these questions. We certainly don't ask those questions along the line. Sir Ken Robinson had this great study about creativity. The average 5-year-old blows us all away when it comes to creativity. The older you get, the less creative you are. So what happens with creativity? And what happens with our comfort level of asking questions? Perhaps it's because we don't want to be that person. We all know who that person is. in our meetings. They always ask one more question. Well, I propose to you today that perhaps it's that person that knows thyself more than us, knows what they need. It's okay to ask a question. I believe it's not okay to hold it within. We need to open up the school doors. We need to open up the business doors to questioning. In schools, looking at this metaphorically, in schools, do we ask enough questions? Do we allow our students to question? What systems have we created to allow our students to ask questions? Now, again, I'm not suggesting that we allow our students to ask questions every step of the way. I don't know how much stuff we'd get done then. But we could certainly create systems that would allow our students to ask questions. Perhaps create a today's meet, and real-time questioning can happen. That the students tweet during the class, Instagram, blog. See, as a quote earlier would suggest, we need to do a better job of teaching how to ask questions, why we ask questions. It will lead to deeper knowledge and levels previously unknown. It is not an easy thing to do to turn over intellectual thought. But as a quick story I will share with you, that it will certainly help develop levels previously unknown. My son Bryce, at 4 years old, asked a simple question. Daddy, why is that tree so big? Having limited knowledge about trees, I wanted to impress my son. So I said, well, son, you see, that's a maple tree. And maple trees are bigger than oak trees and spruce trees. That's why that tree is big. To which he said, why? I said, well, you see, son, it's really simple. It's a different version of trees. That's really what it is, a different classification. It's like I'm trying to figure out what I'm saying. So I draw a metaphor. I said, son, listen, let me give you an analogy. He said, what's an analogy? I'm like, don't worry about it. Son, it's like how I'm different, mommy's different than our neighbors. And he says, why? So I find I'm going down this path of having the birds and bees conversation with my 4-year-old son. So quickly, I need to get out of it. So I say, son, you think the maple's big. You should see these trees called the giant sequoias. They're huge. They're so big, these redwoods in California. They cut holes in the middle of it, and you could drive a car through that. To which he says, why do they want to do that? To which I say, well, son, you see, it's this A-B theory. The straightest, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Thankfully, his attention waned. He was 4 after all. But as I was walking in the house, he said something. Daddy, what about trees? Like, do they fall like other trees because they're so big? That's a good question. So I found myself shortly thereafter on a computer, Googling giant sequoias. And what I found out started with a question of a 4-year-old. What I found out has shaped me, and I've used this metaphorically a ton as an administrator. This is what I found. I found that giant sequoias do not have deep root structures like I would have thought. I mean, after all, you have these crazy storms coming off the Pacific. They do not have a deep root structure. They have a narrow root structure, a shallow root structure, if you will. So you may ask, how could they withstand these storms? Good question, you ask. So the answer is simple. The roots of one intertwine with another. It is not the strength of one, it is the strength of many. So you see, the point is really simple. It is not just the person that asks the question that learns. It's the person who receives it. It's understanding. So my son asked a question, led me to the computer, and metaphorically gave me this great fact that I've used time and time and time again. So you see, if we open up the school doors, if we allow more questioning to take place, I believe that it's not just going to help the student. It's going to help the teacher. It's not just going to help the employee in the business. It's going to help the manager, the CEO, the CFO. We need to be comfortable. In the classroom, do we allow time for questions? Sure we do. When do we do it? At the end of class. What do we say? You have 30 seconds. Does anybody have any questions? Like the question I always want somebody to ask about what? About what we talked about right in the beginning of class? Yeah, I had a question then. So the great teachers are the ones that allow questioning to happen all the time. The phenomenal teachers create a system to allow questions to happen real time. Questions are limitless. We don't have enough time to ask them. But we need to do a better job of confronting the questions. Some of you out there may not be happy with where you are, your lot in life. You may be confronting it right now. Do you like the job you're in? The answer may be no. Leads to another question. Why? Because I'm not compensated enough. Bad reason, but still, you may think that. I'm not enriched enough. There's not enough professional growth. Leads to another question. What are you going to do about it? If you're unhappy in a job you don't like, isn't it time for you to make a move? Not an easy thing to do, but it's a job that needs to happen to answer those questions. So to know thyself is one way, my humble opinion, and that is to answer these questions. So a friend of mine not too long ago asked, Tom, what's this resolve thing all about? I don't get it. I said, you need to confront the brutal facts of your current situation. You need to answer questions, ask questions. Don't be afraid. And he said to me, Tom, no, seriously, what is it all about? What's it all about, this resolve thing? To which I said, I don't know. What about you? Thank you.